The street smelled like rain and burnt corn and desperation. Chantel was 16 years old, barefoot on cracked concrete, holding a stick she had found behind a broken fence. She did not know why she picked it up. Maybe because it looked important. Maybe because when you have nothing, you learn to make props out of rubbish. She planted it in the ground, stood behind it, lifted her chin, and waited. She had watched the old women at the market do this. The ones with cowrie shells and smoky incense and voices that dropped to a whisper when they wanted your money. She had no cowrie shells. She had no incense. She had a stick, an empty stomach, and a face that had learned very early how to look like it knew something you did not. That was enough. He came around the corner like trouble walks, 18 years old, broad shoulders already carrying something heavy, a jaw set so tight it looked like it had never once considered relaxing. He was not ugly. That was the first thing Chantel noticed. The second thing she noticed was that he was frowning so deeply, she briefly wondered if his face had been built that way at birth. He stopped when he saw her. She did not move. He looked at the stick, looked at her, looked at the stick again. "What are you doing?" Chantel let the silence breathe for 3 full seconds. That was important. The silence was the whole performance. "I am reading," she said. "Reading what?" "The air around you." He stared at her. She stared back. Behind her eyes, she was thinking about the bread she would buy if this worked. Soft bread, with groundnut, maybe 2. "You are a soothsayer," he said. It was not quite a question. Chantel did not confirm. She did not deny. She simply tilted her head the way she had seen wise people tilt their heads in films and said, "You came to this road for a reason." He had actually come to this road because it was a shortcut, but something in the way she said it made him slow down, made him look at her differently. She watched it happen in his eyes, that small shift where a person stops seeing what is in front of them and starts seeing what they are afraid of. She almost felt bad. Almost. "How much?" he said. And Chantel, 16 years old, barefoot, holding a stick she found behind a fence, looked at this unsmiling boy with the heavy shoulders and said a number that was triple what she had planned to say. He paid it, every single coin, and she looked into his face, this handsome, frowning, serious face, and thought, why is he doing all this frowning, and opened her mouth and changed his life with a lie. Before you find out exactly what came out of this girl's mouth, and trust me, you are not ready, do me one small favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because this story is about to teach you why you should never, ever lie to a stranger on the road. He might come back, with money and feelings. Now let us continue. Chantel closed her eyes, not because she was receiving a vision. She was receiving nothing. She closed her eyes because it bought her time, and time was what she needed to invent a future for this frowning stranger who had just handed her 3 days of food. She hummed, low and slow, the way the market women hummed. The boy leaned in. She let one eye open, just slightly, to check if he was still buying it. He was. He was buying it with his whole chest. She shut her eyes again and said, in a voice she pitched 2 sizes deeper than her own, "I see, a mountain." "A mountain," he repeated, "a mountain of money." His breath caught. She heard it. Good. She was on the right road. "You will be rich," she continued. "Not small rich, not manage and be grateful rich. I am talking about the kind of rich where your signature is worth more than a building. You will be a billionaire, the #1 man in this country. Cars will be named after you. Your enemies will study you in school." Somewhere in her stomach, hunger applauded her creativity. The boy's frown impossibly deepened. "Then why do you look worried?" "Ah. See, this was the problem with performing. Once the audience is invested, they start reading your face too." Chantel had not planned a second act, but an empty stomach is a fast writer, and so she opened her eyes slowly, looked at that magnificent frown, and let the lie assemble itself. "Because of your face," she said gravely. He blinked. "My face?" "Your face is the problem." His hand rose halfway to his cheek, like he wanted to check if the problem could be felt. "What is wrong with my face?" "You frown," Chantel said. "You frown like the world owes you money and refuses to pay. And that frown—" She pointed the stick at him, and this big, strong boy actually flinched and leaned back, afraid of an ordinary stick. "That frown is the hole in your destiny. Everything you build will leak out through that frown. I have seen it. At the age of 40, if that face has not changed, you will be overtaken in business. Your rivals will surround you like ants around sugar. You will lose everything, everything, even your bed. My bed. Even the pillow. He looked genuinely shaken about the pillow. But there is a remedy, Chantel said, because the market women always sold the remedy after the fear. That was the business model. You must smile. Silence. Smile, he repeated, the way people repeat words in languages they do not speak. At all times, at everyone, at your friends, at your workers, even at your enemies, especially your enemies. Love conquers everything. A smiling face cannot be overtaken. And listen to me carefully. She lowered her voice, and he bent toward her like a plant toward sunlight. Work hard and never oppress the poor. The day you oppress the poor, the prophecy scatters. Do you hear me? It scatters. That last part she added for the community. If this boy was truly going to be rich, the least she could do was make him a nice rich person. Consider it tax. The boy stood there on the broken road, holding his empty wallet, receiving his new religion. Smile, he said again, testing it, and then he tried. Chantel watched an 18-year-old boy attempt his first deliberate smile the way you would watch a man attempt to fold a fitted bedsheet. Something moved on the left side of his face, then the right side joined, but too late, so for a moment the two halves of his mouth were doing different jobs. His eyes did not participate at all. They watched her from above the struggling mouth like two security guards supervising a delivery. It was the worst smile Chantel had ever seen in her life. Good, she lied. Practice. He nodded, seriously, deeply, the nod of a man receiving military instructions, turned and walked away down the broken road, and every few steps she saw his shoulders shift as he practiced, smiling at a gutter, smiling at a parked truck, smiling at a confused goat. Chantel pulled her stick out of the ground, went straight to the bakery, and bought the soft bread, with groundnut, too. She ate the first one slowly, watching the road, and by the time she finished the second, she had completely forgotten his face. He, on the other hand, would remember hers for 11 years, because here is the thing about lies. You can throw a lie away like a seed, walk off, and forget it. But somewhere behind you, if the ground is soft enough, if the person is desperate enough, the thing germinates, and this boy's heart was very, very soft ground. His name was Ji-Tai-O, and the prophecy landed on his life like government policy. He got a job in a warehouse and smiled while lifting crates until the foreman asked if he was okay. He smiled through 2 robberies, 1 stabbing attempt, and a landlord who doubled his rent, and strangely, terrifyingly, things kept working out. The robbers got confused and left. The landlord lowered the rent back, unsettled by the boy who received bad news, grinning. Ji-Tai-O noted all of it in a small book he kept, under a heading he had written in careful letters. Evidence. By 23, he ran the warehouse. By 26, he owned it. By 29, gentlemen in dark suits were calling him Sir, and rival organizations were calling him something else, something whispered. And it was around this time that the country learned the most important rule about Ji-Tai-O, the rule that separated the living from the hospitalized. The smile means nothing. He smiled when profits doubled. He smiled when a partner betrayed him, kept smiling through the entire meeting where the man confessed, smiled while shaking his hand, smiled at the door as security escorted the man to an outcome this story will not describe. He smiled at his accountants until 3 of them resigned for health reasons, citing the face. There was a famous story, every one of his men knew it, about the negotiation, where a rival boss slammed the table and shouted for 20 minutes, and Chairman G simply sat there, hands folded, smiling like a class photo, until the rival boss's own men began quietly moving toward the exits. The rival signed everything. Later, in an interview from a location he refused to disclose, he said the following words: "You cannot negotiate with that. You shout at him, and the man smiles at you like you are bread." And through all of it, every deal, every empire floor added, every enemy who came in roaring and left signing, Ji-Tai-O kept 2 commandments carved on the inside of his ribs. Never stop smiling, never oppress the poor. His companies paid the highest minimum wage in the industry. His building's cleaners had health insurance so comprehensive that middle managers were quietly furious. Every December, envelopes of cash rained down on street vendors near his headquarters from a man whose smile made them too nervous to say thank you properly. The newspapers called him a visionary with unusual warmth. His rivals called him a demon in a good mood. Only Ji Tae-o knew the truth, and the truth lived in his chest where the vault was. He was a man serving a prophecy. 40 was coming. The deadline was real. Somewhere out there was a prophetess who had seen his whole life at a glance on a broken road, and until the age of 40 passed safely, the smile stays on. There was only one person on this earth who could make the smile real: his little sister. Ji Dan-bi was 10 years younger, and when their parents died, she had become, in no particular order, his reason, his headache, his dinner supervisor, and the only human being alive who could hit Chairman Ji Tae-o on the arm without consequences. She was in her final year of university. She had a laugh you could hear through concrete, and she had appointed herself chief officer of his personal life, a department with zero activity. "Appa," she said, at least once a month, barging into his office with food containers. "You are almost 30, and you have never brought a woman home. I am starting to suspect you will die alone in this office, and the funeral will just be me and your bodyguards." "I'm busy, Danby." "Busy smiling at criminals. Meanwhile, no girlfriend. You know what I think?" She pointed a spoon at him. "I think it is that prophecy woman. Ever since you told me about her, I knew. She put a curse on you. Smile at everybody. What kind of wicked person tells a teenager that? Now look at you. You smile at gangsters and you cannot smile at one woman over dinner. If I ever meet that fake prophetess..." She cracked her knuckles, a tiny girl in a university hoodie. "I will break her legs, both of them, one for each decade of your suffering." Ji Tae-o smiled. The real one, the small one, the one only she got. "Eat your food," he said. "Now, hold that threat in your mind. Keep it somewhere safe. Because 11 years after a barefoot girl planted a stick in a broken road, the universe, which had been watching this whole time and which has a sense of humor, finally decided it was bored. Across the city, in a clean, well-kept apartment she had paid for with her own sweat, a 27-year-old woman was ironing a blouse for the interview of her life. Chantal had survived, and then she had done more than survive. That was her resume, her degree, and her personality. 11 years of markets, warehouses, offices, of climbing from nothing to something with her own two hands, of being the fastest learner and the hardest worker in every room, of a reputation that traveled ahead of her like a headline. That woman fears nothing and finishes everything, just pay her. Chantal loved money. No, love is too small a word. Love is casual. Love takes weekends off. What Chantal had with money was religion. She had been hungry before. Truly hungry, stick on a broken road hungry, and she had made her vows. Never again. She did not drink her salary, did not wear her salary, did not romance her salary. She stacked it, brick by brick, building a wall between herself and that street. Which is why, when a former employer's head of security, a mountain of a man named Mr. Beck, who had once watched her chase down a fraudulent supplier and retrieve payment with nothing but a folder of receipts and the confidence of an army, called to say he was now working for the biggest chairman in the country, and the chairman needed a personal assistant and the salary was, and he said the number? Chantal held the phone away from her ear, looked at it, and brought it back. "Say it again." He said it again. "Mr. Beck, if this is a joke, I will find you. Interview is Monday, 9 o'clock. Dress well. And Chantal, the chairman is not a normal man. Whatever happens in that office, do not be afraid." "Afraid of what? For that salary, I will assist a lion." She found out on Sunday night. She was doing her research, because Chantal prepared for interviews like generals prepare for war, and she typed the company name and the website loaded, and there, at the top of the page, above the words, Chairman Ji Tae-o, was a photograph of a devastatingly handsome man in a suit that cost more than her building. Smiling. Chantal stared at the smile. The smile stared back. And somewhere in the basement of her memory, a door she had locked 11 years ago creaked open, and out walked a frowning teenage boy with heavy shoulders, holding out coins saying, "How much?" "No," she told the laptop. The laptop said nothing. She zoomed in. The frown was gone. The frown was extremely gone. The man was smiling like a toothpaste billboard that had seen combat. But the jaw was that jaw. The eyes above the smile were those eyes, still watching, still not participating. "No, no, no." She stood up, walked one lap around her small room, came back, zoomed in more until the smile was the size of her hand. No. It was him, the shortcut boy, the frowning boy, the boy she had sold a fake destiny to for the price of 2 loaves of bread. Except, and this was the part that made Chantel sit down slowly on her bed like an old woman, the fake destiny had come true. All of it. The mountain of money, #1 man in the country. She had thrown a lie over her shoulder 11 years ago, and the lie had gone and built all of this. She screamed into her pillow for 10 full minutes. Then she lifted her head, wiped her face, and did what Chantel does. Math. That salary times 12 months, times even 1 year of employment, minus rent. She looked at the ceiling. God, she said, I know what this looks like. The ceiling was silent, the way ceilings are when they are disappointed in you. He doesn't know it was me. I was 16, it was dark. Okay, it was afternoon, but I have changed. I am a whole adult now. I will just work, collect salary, keep my head down. He will never know. She nodded to herself, decision made, and picked up the iron. Besides, she added, pressing the collar flat, the prophecy worked. Technically, that man owes me royalties. Monday, 9 o'clock, the top floor of a building so tall, the elevator ride had 2 phases. Chantel walked into an office the size of her entire childhood neighborhood, and behind a desk of black stone sat Chairman G-Tio, and he looked up from a document, and he smiled. Lord. On the website, the smile had been a photograph. In person, it was weather. It filled the room, that smile, warm and bright and completely, totally uninhabited, like a beautiful house where you somehow know nobody lives. Chantel's soul quietly stepped out of her body, reviewed the situation, and asked if it was too late to wait outside. Miss Chantel, said the chairman in a voice like a hand pressing down, please sit. She sat, spine straight, face composed, 11 years of survival closing around her like armor. He studied her. The smile stayed on while the eyes worked, and that was the horror of it, the eyes doing serious business above a mouth on vacation. Mr. Bayek stood by the wall, gazing at nothing, radiating I told you so. Mr. Beck speaks very highly of you, the chairman said. He says you are fierce. He says you once made a supplier cry using paperwork. The supplier cried on his own, sir. I only brought receipts. Something flickered across the chairman's face, interest, and he leaned forward slightly, and the smile came closer, and then his eyes narrowed just a fraction, just 1 degree, and he said the words. Have we met before? The room went very quiet. In her head, in that moment, Chantel was in full negotiation with heaven. God, deliver me this one time only. I know I said that 11 years ago too, but if you deliver me today, I will never lie again in my life. I will become the most honest woman in this country. They will write about my honesty. Please. The salary? Lord, you have seen the salary yourself. She looked into the face of the man whose entire personality she had personally installed at age 16, smiled politely and said, No, sir, I have one of those faces. God forgive her. She did it again. The chairman held her gaze for 3 long seconds and let it go. Strange. Something about you feels... He waved the sentence away like smoke. Never mind. When can you start? Immediately, sir. Salary? Whatever Mr. Bayek quoted, she said, and then, because Chantel is Chantel, plus 10% considering the risks of your industry. Mr. Bayek's eyes widened at the wall. The chairman looked at her for a moment. Then he laughed, a short, strange, funny sound, so different from the smooth smile that Chantel blinked in surprise, and said, Approved. Welcome aboard, Miss Chantel. She should have paid attention to that laugh. That laugh was a warning, because working for Chairman G-Tio turned out to be exactly what the salary suggested. Impossible, dangerous, around the clock, and Chantel was magnificent at it. Within a month, she had reorganized his schedule so thoroughly that 2 of his managers privately asked her if she was hiring. Within 2 months, she had learned the ecosystem, which smiles meant proceed, which meant caution, which meant that somewhere in the city, a warehouse was about to have a very bad evening. Files that took others a week she produced overnight. When a nervous business partner tried to slide a bribe across her desk to secure a meeting slot, she slid it back and said, Sir, I am too expensive to be bought cheaply. Book through the proper channel. And the chairman, who heard about it, laughed that strange, funny laugh alone in his office. And the tasks, whatever the task, however impossible, her answer never changed. Fly overnight to secure a deal? Done. For the travel bonus. Personally deliver a contract to a rival compound where grown bodyguards refuse to go? She went in with her folder and her interview shoes, came out 40 minutes later with signatures, and submitted an invoice titled Hazard Fee with 3 items on it. The chairman approved it while smiling at the paper like it had told him a joke. "Chairman," Mr. Beck said one evening, watching her march to the elevator with Tomorrow's War under her arm, "in my life, I have never seen a human being so motivated by money. If you told Miss Chantel there was a bonus on the moon, NASA would be receiving her CV tonight." Said the chairman. He was watching the elevator too. Here's what nobody tells you about hiring the person who invented your personality. Something in you recognizes them, not the memory. The memory had filed her under a broken road and let the face blur, but something underneath the memory. Peace. For 11 years, Ji Taio had smiled at a world that flinched, negotiated, or fainted. Chantel did none of those things. When his smile came at her, she checked it the way you check the weather. "Ah, sunny," meaning sign these, and continued talking. She was fierce like the street was fierce. She was hungry like he had been hungry. She fit into his world like she had been cut from the same broken concrete. He started finding reasons. Meetings that did not require his PA acquired his PA. Contracts that could be emailed suddenly needed to be reviewed together, in his office, in the evening, over food he ordered without asking and pushed toward her side of the desk. He learned her coffee order and pretended he hadn't. Once, in the middle of a genuinely dangerous week, he caught himself smiling at the sound of her heels in the corridor and stopped, alarmed, because that one had felt different. That one had moved on its own. Chantel noticed none of it, because Chantel was not looking. Love was not her department. Love had no salary structure. Men had approached before, throughout her 20s, and she had reviewed each proposal like a bank reviewing a loan application from someone with no collateral, and declined at her earliest convenience. Her heart had one room, and money lived there, and money was a quiet, reliable roommate that had never once broken a promise. So when the chairman's food arrived on her side of the desk, she ate it. Free food is money saved. When he extended meetings, she billed the hours. The man could have written her a poem, and she would have filed it. And this exact blindness is what the universe was waiting for. Because one Friday afternoon, Ji Danbi came to the office with food containers. She came unannounced, as always, past security that had standing orders to let her through, up the elevator, down the corridor, and pushed open her brother's door with her foot because her hands were full, already talking. "Appa, I made too much japchae, so you are going to eat and I don't want to hear—" And stopped, because there, behind the desk, was her brother. And bent beside his chair, close, one hand on the desk, head near his head, was a woman. A beautiful woman, pointing at something on a document while the chairman looked up at her instead of the page. To be fair to Ji Danbi, and history must be fair to her, consider the evidence of her entire life. 29 years, not one woman, not a girlfriend, not a date, not a rumor. She had privately begun preparing herself for a future of visiting her brother's grave with flowers and updating him on a family that did not exist. And now, a woman, bending beside him, proximity. The food containers trembled. "Oh my God." Chantel straightened up so fast her back clicked. The chairman's smile stayed exactly in place while his eyes did something complicated. "Danbi, oh my God." The containers went on to the nearest surface and the girl advanced into the office like breaking news. "Who is this? Appa, who is this? Why is she standing so close to you? Why are you letting her stand so close to you? You don't let anybody—" She gasped, both hands flying up to her face. "Is this her? Is this her?" "This is my personal assistant," the chairman said. "Miss Chantel, she was showing me a contract." "A contract," Danby repeated, with the expression of a detective who has heard contract used as a code word before. She circled Chantel slowly, examining her from shoes to hair, while Chantel stood in the middle of the office, experiencing the specific fear of a liar meeting an unknown variable. "Personal assistant, standing inside your personal weather, Miss Chantel." She stopped in front of her, looked up at her. She was a full head shorter, with enormous shining eyes. And then Danby smiled the family smile, except hers was real all the way through, and said, "Sister-in-law." What? No. Chantel looked at the chairman for help. The chairman looked back at her with the placid smile of a man who had decided to see how this meeting goes. "Madam, I am just the PA." She said, "Madam," Danby told the ceiling, delighted. "So respectful. Appa, she is respectful." She seized Chantel's hands in both of hers. "Listen, I need you to understand what you are looking at. This man has been alone for 29 years. I thought it was hopeless. I thought, okay, you know what? Since you are basically family now, come, sit. I will tell you everything. It is a long story. It involves a prophecy." The word landed in Chantel's chest like a dropped plate. "A wee prophecy," she said. "Sit, sit." Danby steered her onto the sofa, sat beside her, still holding her hand, while across the office the chairman rose, buttoned his jacket, and said "Danby," in a warning tone that his sister acknowledged with the respect of a pigeon acknowledging a statue. "So, 11 years ago. My brother is 18, life is terrible, everything is hard. One day he is walking home and he meets this woman, on the road, a fake prophetess, a scammer, a wicked, wicked street witch." Danby. "I am telling the story. This witch stands there with her juju stick and tells my brother, an innocent boy, that if he ever frowns again, he will lose everything at 40. Even his pillow, Appa? You said she mentioned the pillow?" "I don't remember the pillow." The chairman lied. He remembered the pillow. And that he must smile at everybody forever. And this innocent boy believed it. 11 years. 11 years he has been smiling at criminals and murderers and board members. Do you know what that does to a person? He smiles in his sleep now. I have seen it. It is terrifying. She gripped Chantel's hand tighter, and Chantel, sweating gently, gripped back, because what else can you do when your victim's sister is holding the hand that held the stick? And the worst part? The 40 thing. It sits in his head. He thinks nobody knows he worries about it, but every birthday he goes quiet like a man counting down. "That witch put a timer inside my brother." "Terrible," Chantel said faintly. "Wicked," Danby agreed. "So wicked." "You know what I always say?" Danby leaned in, and her sweet, round face arranged itself into an expression of pure, sincere, loving violence. "If I ever meet that woman, if that fake prophetess ever crosses my path, I will break her legs, both legs, one for each decade of my brother's suffering. I have thought about it in detail. I know which leg first." The office was silent. Chantel sat on the sofa, hand in the hand of her future leg breaker, sweat moving slowly down her spine like it was also trying to escape without being noticed. Across the room, the chairman watched her with his eternal smile, and for one horrifying second she was sure, absolutely sure, that the eyes above the smile knew everything. They did not yet. "Anyway," Danby clapped, sunshine restored. "Japche, sister-in-law, you eat with us, no arguments. I need to know your blood type and your intentions." If you are enjoying this disaster, take 1 second right now to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, because Chantel's plan to quietly collect her salary is about to fall apart in the most spectacular way, and you do not want to miss the airport. Now, back to the story. The guilt started that night. Chantel had carried the lie for 11 years the way you carry an old receipt in a jacket pocket, technically present, entirely forgotten. The boy had been a stranger. Strangers dissolve, but the boy was no longer a stranger. The boy signed her salary. The boy pushed food across desks and laughed that strange, funny laugh when she out-negotiated him and had smiled in his sleep for 11 years because of her. And now the boy had a sister, a small, loud, loving sister who had held Chantel's hand and shown her the machinery of the damage. "A timer," Danby had said. "That witch put a timer inside my brother." Chantel lay on her bed, stared at her ceiling, the same disappointed ceiling, and did something she had not done in years. Math that made her feel worse. He was 29. The deadline was 40. 11 more years. 11 more years this man was planning to smile at his enemies because a hungry teenager had wanted bread with groundnut. And she could never tell him, because the moment she opened her mouth, the salary was gone. Worse than the salary, the legs were gone. Danby knew which one first. And worst of all, somehow worst of all, was the thought of that face finding out. Not the smile. The eyes. The eyes finding out that the vault in his chest had breadcrumbs in it. "It's fine," she informed the ceiling. "I will work. I will save. I will resign politely in 1 year and vanish. He survived 11 years. He will survive 11 more. The prophecy even helped him. He is rich. He doesn't oppress the poor. I basically raised him." The ceiling said nothing at length, so Chantel did the only thing she knew how to do with a feeling she could not afford. She put it in a drawer and doubled her work speed, which had an effect she did not calculate. Because from the outside, from say the perspective of a 29-year-old chairman quietly falling for his PA, Chantel after that Friday looked like a woman gripped by devotion. She came earlier, she stayed later, she anticipated his needs with new, frantic precision, because a busy conscience is quiet, and when he thanked her, she said, "It's nothing, sir," and fled the room, because kindness from him had started to feel like interest on a loan she could never repay. The chairman watched her flee and thought, "She is shy." He was a disciplined man. He had interrogated his own heart with the same rigor he applied to suspicious shipments, and the heart had confessed immediately. It was her. It had probably been her since the hazard fee invoice. And so GTO began, for the first time in his life, a courtship, conducted with the subtlety of a man whose only reference material was Mafia negotiations. He raised her salary, unprompted, 20%. Chantel stared at the letter. Guilt said, "You cannot accept this." 11 years of hunger said, "Excuse me?" She accepted it, obviously. She was reformed, not insane, and then worked even harder to deserve it, which read as even more devotion, which 2 weeks later produced a second raise, at which point Mr. Beck came to her desk and asked quietly if she was blackmailing the chairman, because whatever it is, Miss Chantel, teach me. Gifts appeared, not romantic gifts, the man did not have that vocabulary, but his dialect of it, a phone upgrade for security reasons, a car and driver for efficiency, a coat in winter left on her chair with a sticky note that said, in handwriting she had only ever seen signed death warrants, "It is cold, JT." Chantel wore the coat because free coat, money saved. He saw her in it across the lobby and walked into a glass door. He asked her to dinners that he called strategy reviews, at restaurants where no strategy had ever been reviewed, where candles were involved, and he would watch her order the most expensive item without shame. She considered it invoice recovery, and something in his chest would expand painfully, and he would think, in the completely serious internal voice of a mafia boss in love, "She eats like she is punishing my enemies. I want to see this every day for the rest of my life." And one evening, over one of those dinners, he set down his glass, and the smile did something it never did. It got smaller, softer. It moved into his eyes for a visit. "Chantel?" he said. "No, miss. Can I ask you something? As a man, not a chairman." Every instinct she had stood up and put on running shoes. "Sir, do you care about anything other than money?" The question sat between the candles. "Because I have watched you," he continued in that pressing hand voice, but quieter now, uncertain in a way that did not fit his shoulders. "You are the fiercest person I have ever employed. You walk into rooms my soldiers avoid. You bill me for it. You billed me a hazard fee, I framed it, and I keep asking myself why a woman like this loves money more than her own life, more than anything a man could put next to it." He turned the glass slowly. "I grew up with nothing. I know what money means when you have seen the bottom, but even I put something above it." He looked up. "Is there anything above it for you? Anything at all?" And here is the tragedy, the real engine of this whole story. The honest answer was becoming yes. There was now something Chantel cared about other than money, and that something was sitting right across the table from her, laughing at her jokes, leaving coats on chairs for her, falling for her behind a smile she had personally installed. The feelings had been arriving for weeks quietly, the way water arrives under a door, and Chantel could never, ever admit them, because love leads to questions. How they met, who she was, what she had done, the timer she had put inside him. One honest feeling would pull the whole lie out with it. So she smiled the smile she had learned at 16, the one that looked like it knew something you did not, and said, "Money never breaks your heart, sir." And Teo, who could hear a lie in a boardroom from 40 feet, heard something underneath that sentence, could not name it, and mistook the sound of guilt for the sound of a wall that might, with patience, come down. He was patient. He decided to wait. She was terrified. She decided to run. The plan assembled itself in her head that same night with the cold efficiency she usually reserved for his calendar. One final year was now impossible. This was no longer a salary situation. This was a heart situation, his and, inconveniently, hers. And hearts were exactly the kind of asset she had sworn never to hold. They had no resale value and 100% crash risk. So, 3 months, aggressive saving, quietly sell the extra phone, line up a job in another city through an old friend, far away, different industry, no mafia, boring, safe, book a one-way flight, serve her resignation by email from the departure gate, polite and full of gratitude, untraceable. 3 months. She could survive anything for 3 months. But here's the thing about running from a man while feeling guilty toward him. Guilt is affectionate. Guilt overcompensates. In her final 3 months, Chantel, determined to leave nothing but good memories behind, became warm. She stopped fleeing rooms after his thank yous and stayed and smiled back. She started remembering things, his real coffee order, that he hated carrots, that the laugh got louder when he was tired, and deploying that knowledge tenderly the way you are gentle with, something you have already said goodbye to in your heart. At the strategy review dinners, she stopped ordering like an invoice and started asking him questions about the warehouse years, about Danby as a baby, about the road he grew up on, and listening with her chin in her hand, storing him up like provisions for a journey. And then, one Saturday, she did something that had never happened in the history of their working relationship. She took him out. Not a strategy review, not a business dinner. She appeared beside his desk, took the pen out of his hand mid-signature, closed the folder, and said, "Sir, get your coat. Today I am the chairman and you are the assistant. Your only job is to follow instructions." "One correction," he said, rising, reaching for his coat with suspicious speed for a man being kidnapped from his own office. "If I am the assistant today, then I am not sir. Assistants are called by their names. Say it." "Get your coat, Teo." He would replay those 4 words in his head for the rest of the week. She took him to a street food market on the other side of the city, the kind of place his convoy had driven past 1,000 times and never once entered. No reservations, no private rooms, plastic stools. She marched him from stall to stall saying, "Taste this," and watching his face for the verdict, told him which vendors were honest and which ones padded the bill, argued with a corn seller over price on his behalf and won, and handed him the roasted corn like a trophy. And Chairman Teo, a man who had negotiated deals worth more than this entire district, stood in the evening crowd holding discounted corn and feeling like he had just been knighted. And then a man stepped on him. Fully, directly on his shoe. The shoe that cost more than the stall they were standing beside, and kept walking. No apology, no glance back, nothing. Now understand what should have happened. In any other version of this evening, in any other district of this city, that man's whole week would have quietly rearranged itself. But the chairman was off duty and happy and holding corn, so he simply looked at his shoe, decided the evening was worth more than the shoe, and let it go. Chantel did not let it go. She handed him her skewer. "Hold this." Walked 3 stalls deep into the crowd, caught the man by the collar, and reversed him. The entire market watched a stranger get towed backward through foot traffic by a woman half his width, deposited directly in front of the chairman, and turned by the shoulders like furniture being positioned. "You stepped on him," Chantel said. "Apologize." The man opened his mouth to argue, then he looked at her face properly. Whatever he saw there made him reconsider his position on the matter, his position in the crowd, and several of his life choices, and he bowed deeply to the chairman. "I am sorry, sir. Truly, my mistake." Then, straightening up, desperate to escape alive, he turned to Chantel and bowed even deeper. "And madam, please beg your husband to forgive me. Have a good evening, both of you. A blessed evening, a long marriage." And he fled. Silence. Chantel opened her mouth to correct him, closed it, opened it again. The chairman stood there holding a skewer and roasted corn, smiling the office smile, saying absolutely nothing helpful. "We are not," she announced, to the market in general, but the market had moved on, and the vendor behind them said, "Madam, your husband's corn is getting cold," and the chairman said, "You heard him, my wife." And Chantel did not speak to him for 2 entire stalls, which was difficult because she was still pointing out which vendors padded the bill. Some religions you keep. Then she fed the man skewers, fish cakes, soup from a pot older than both of them, and a soft bread with groundnut that she ordered with a strange little smile, and watched him eat with an expression he could not translate. And when the final bill came at the last stall, the biggest one, the one where they had sat the longest, the chairman reached for his wallet the way he had reached for every bill in the last 11 years. The wallet never made it out. Chantel slapped a hand flat on his wrist and pinned it to the table, the way security men pin threats, without even looking at him, her other hand already counting out her own money. "Madam is paying," she told the stall owner. "Chantel. Madam is paying. Chantel, I have never, She turned to him, one finger up, deadly. "Have you forgotten yourself? Today you are the assistant. I am the chairman. And since when do assistants pay bills in front of their chairman? Who gave you permission to even touch your wallet? Put it away. Sit down, look handsome, and be decorative." The stall owner, a grandmother of about 70 who had watched the entire evening unfold, leaned across the pot and told the most feared man in the country, gently and with great sympathy, "My son, don't fight it. Mine is the same. 41 years now. Just eat." He sat down. He was decorative. And across the table, Chairman G. Tai-O, a man who owned buildings he had never visited, who had never in 11 years watched another human being pay for anything on his behalf. Watch this woman count out her own notes, argue the total down by 10% out of pure principle, and pay for his dinner like it was nothing, like he was nothing, like he was just a man. Nobody had ever paid for him before. He looked away and drank his soup, and his chest did something he had no procedure for. At some point it rained suddenly the way it does, and they stood squeezed under one small awning with strangers, shoulder to shoulder, steam rising off the food pots, and he looked down at her. At this woman laughing at the rain with sauce at the corner of her mouth, and the thought arrived in his chest, quiet and enormous. She cares. This is not salary. Nobody does this for salary. He was right that nobody does that for salary. He just had the reason wrong, because Chantel stood under that awning, watching him eat soft bread with groundnut without knowing what it meant. And inside her chest, the guilt and the love had stopped being two different things. This was an apology and a goodbye, and 11 years of interest on 2 loaves of bread, paid in full, in the only currency she could give him without confessing. He went home that night and could not sleep. She went home that night and booked the flight. She knew what she was doing. She told herself it was severance, a goodbye gift he would only understand later. He did not know what she was doing, so he understood it in the only available language. "She is reconsidering me. The wall is coming down." Ji Tae-o had always smiled without meaning it. Now, for the first time, his household staff began to witness something new. Real smiles. Smiles that reached the eyes. Smiles that appeared on their own when nobody was watching, when he thought of something or someone. He hummed during threat assessments. He was merciful in negotiations that should have ended badly. And one afternoon, Danby came with food, took one look at him, and pointed with her whole arm. "You are different. Something happened. Is it sister-in-law? It is sister-in-law. Opa. Should I learn how she takes her tea? I will learn it today." He didn't confirm it. He also, for the record, did not deny it, and Danby ran one full lap of the office. He began privately to plan, not a proposal, even he knew it was early, but the step before the step, a real dinner stated plainly, no strategy in the title. He chose a date 2 weeks out. He rehearsed sentences in his car. Chairman Ji Tae-o, who had stared down every dangerous man in the country, sat in traffic practicing the words, "not as your employer," to his own steering wheel. The file arrived on a Thursday. It was Mr. Bayek who brought it, because it was Mr. Bayek's job to know things, and because loyal men do not enjoy their jobs on days like this. He entered the office, closed the door, and placed a folder on the black stone desk with the gentleness of a man handling an explosive. "Chairman, you need to see this." "Standard vetting," he explained. "Routine monitoring, everyone close to the chairman, security protocol, no exceptions." The words marched out in order while Ji Tae-o opened the folder, smiling by default. A one-way ticket, booked 3 weeks ago, departing Sunday. A job contract, another city, signed. Resumption date, the following month. Correspondence with an old friend going back 3 months, the same 3 months she had been warm, the same 3 months of coffee and dinners, and remembering how he liked things. A lease application, a bank printout, the stacking of bricks, accelerating, the quiet sale of a phone he had given her for security reasons. Resignation letter recovered from a drafts folder, dated for Sunday, scheduled to be sent from the airport. Polite, full of gratitude. The smile stayed on. That was the terrible part, Mr. Bayek said later, telling it only once to Dan B., who had demanded to know everything. The smile stayed exactly where it had lived for 11 years, while everything behind it went somewhere else, like watching the lights of a building go off floor by floor, with the sign outside still glowing. 60 seconds passed inside the office like weather. "Sir," Mr. Bax said finally, "do you want me to—" "No." The chairman closed the folder. His voice was even. The smile did not move. "Nobody touches her. Nobody follows her. Nothing changes." He slid the folder into a drawer and looked out the window at his city. "I want a watch." "Watch, sir?" "She is the fiercest person I have ever known," said Ji Teo quietly to the glass. "She walks into rooms my soldiers avoid, so if she is running from me—" And here the voice stayed perfectly level, which was somehow worse than breaking. "I want to see her do it. I want to see if she can." He watched. Friday. She came early, warm as morning, remembered his coffee, laughed at his strange, funny laugh, and he sat behind his black stone desk receiving all of it like a man drinking seawater. Every kindness now had a translation. The chin in her hand, severance. The coffee, severance. 3 months of thaw, remapped in one afternoon into 3 months of a professional wrapping up an account. And the very worst thought, the one that visited at 2 a.m., was any of it from the interview onward ever anything else? He reviewed their entire time together like a compromised ledger. He found entries he could not explain, the way she looked at him sometimes lately, like provisions for a journey, and he could not tell anymore which numbers were real, and for a man who had built an empire on reading faces, that was the deepest cut available. That night, he sat alone in his office long after the building emptied, the folder open on the black stone desk, and for the first time in years, Ji Tae-o did not know what to do. He had faced betrayal before. Betrayal had a procedure. Men had lied to him, stolen from him, sold him out, and he had smiled through all of it because none of them had ever reached anything that mattered. But this one had walked past every guard he had, sat down inside his chest, learned how he took his coffee, and packed her bags. And the part that frightened him, the part he could not say out loud to anyone, not even Danby, was that even now, holding the evidence in his hands, knowing everything, some stubborn, foolish thing in him was still hoping there was an explanation, still hoping he had read the file wrong the way she had somehow read him right. He caught his reflection in the dark window, smiling at the folder out of pure habit, and for one moment he hated that smile. The mask that had kept the whole world out and had still somehow let one person in. He poured a drink he did not touch. He drafted a message he did not send. He stood at the window and watched the city he owned and felt, for the first time since a broken road 11 years ago, like a boy holding out every coin he had, hoping a stranger would tell him he was going to be okay. Saturday, she worked a half day, organized his following week with heartbreaking perfection, color-coded, cross-referenced, a machine that would run without her. And at the door she paused and turned and looked at the office for 1 second too long. "Goodbye, sir," she said. "Goodbye, Chantel," said the chairman, smiling. Sunday, the airport. She arrived 3 hours early because Chantel prepared for escapes like generals prepare for war. 1 suitcase, 11 years of survival travels light, boarding pass on her phone, resignation email sitting in drafts, thumb hovering, scheduled for the gate. She checked in. She passed through the machines. She reached the far shore of departures where the big windows are, where the planes sat fat and gray in the morning light, and she found a seat facing the glass, and her phone buzzed. Voice note. Ji Tae-o. Her whole body went cold. He knows. Then reason caught up. It was Sunday morning. He sometimes sent Sunday tasks. Act normal, listen, respond normally, bored. She pressed play. Chantel. A pause, long enough that she checked if it had, ended. It's Sunday. You send me the week's schedule on Sunday nights. I realize I have never thanked you for that properly. So, thank you. That's all this one is. Thank you. That one is. Her stomach dropped through the airport floor. Buzz. Second note. I know, by the way. His voice was even, the terrible boardroom even. The ticket, the job, the resignation letter sitting in your drafts, the one you have not even sent yet. It's very polite. You were always thorough. I have known since Thursday. Nobody is coming, Chantel. Nobody is following you. I only ask that you listen to the rest of these, and then you can go wherever you are going. She sat extremely still, phone at her ear, planes fat and gray beyond the glass. Buzz. All my life, I have read every face in every room. It is how I survived. It is how I built everything I have. Men lie to me, and I see it before they finish the sentence. But you... A pause, and when the voice came back, it was lower. I cannot read you, Chantel. I have tried. Since Thursday, I have done nothing but sit here and go through every moment. The coffee, the dinners, the way you... The recording caught something and discarded it. I keep asking myself which of it was real, even one moment of it. I need to know. A pause. No, forget that. A man like me does not need anything from anyone. I want to know. That is different. My sister tells me it is different. Buzz. Fourth one. Sorry. Dan B says men who send more than 2 voice notes are finished. She doesn't know anything yet. She just saw my face and made me soup. She keeps talking about you. A small breath like a laugh that died before it could live. Every time she cooks now, she sets the table for 3. Me, her, and you. She has already decided you are family. Nobody has told her yet that you... The recording stopped there. That was the whole message. Buzz. I am not angry, Chantel. I could never be angry at you. That is the part I don't understand. Any other person who did this to me? You know what happens to people who deceive me. But you? I sat here all night trying to be angry at you and my heart refused. Whatever you are running from, if it is this life, the dangerous work, the darkness around me, I understand. God knows I have wanted to run from it myself. But if it is me, if I did something, if I said something, if there is something about me that made you pack your life quietly and run in the dark like I am a thing to escape from, his voice cracked, and this time he did not fix it. Then please, one day, not today, just one message. Tell me what I did. A man can go mad like this. There are precedents. Yesterday at the door, you said goodbye to me, a real goodbye, and I stood there and smiled at you like a fool because I already knew what it was. I have been hearing that goodbye in my head all night, and I still could not make myself stop you. Buzz. The 6th one. The 6th one was 11 seconds long. The door stays open, Chantel, that's all. The door stays open. The gate agent called her flight. Chantel stood at the glass with her phone against her chest, and her boarding group boarded, and she did not move. The final call came and went. The plane pushed back, she watched it, taxied, queued, lifted, folded its wheels, and shrank into the gray morning with her seat empty inside it. And still she stood there, one hand on the suitcase, doing the only math that had ever defeated her. She stood for 2 hours. Anyone watching, and someone was watching, would have seen a woman argue with a window. Reach for the phone, put it away, start toward the exit, stop, sit, stand immediately. At one point, she laughed once at nothing, the punched-out laugh of a person who has just seen the shape of their own life from above. A girl plants a lie on a broken road, and the lie grows for 11 years, and then the lie sends her 6 voice notes, and the 6th one is 11 seconds long, and it holds the door open. Money never breaks your heart. That was the whole religion. Money keeps its promises. Money has no eyes above its smile. Money never stands in your chest at an airport refusing to board. 2 hours, and the war ended the way it was always going to end. Chantel exhaled, picked up the suitcase, turned around to go home. And there he was, far across the concourse, past the drift of travelers, standing perfectly still in a Sunday coat with no bodyguards and no entourage. GTO, who had told her the truth. Nobody had followed her. Nobody had. He had come himself, hours ago, and had been standing at that respectful, impossible distance the whole time, watching her not board a plane. And he was not smiling. That was how she knew it was really him, and really now. The famous face was doing nothing at all, just watching her, open and unarmed, 18 again, a boy on a broken road who had paid every coin. Chantel dropped the suitcase. Later, the airport's cleaning staff would disagree about details, but all witnesses confirmed the essentials. A woman crossed an entire departure concourse at a dead run, weaving through a tour group, vaulting somebody's luggage cart, and collided with a motionless man in a Sunday coat hard enough to knock a full step backward out of him. And the man's arms closed around her like a verdict, and the two of them stood wrapped up in the middle of the morning crowd for a very, very long time. "You didn't board," he said into her hair. "You counted wrong," she said into his coat. It wasn't 6 voice notes, it was a hostage situation. And then she heard it, that laugh, that short, strange, funny laugh, detonating directly above her ear, enormous and ridiculous, so loud that travelers turned around to look. She felt it shake through his chest into hers, this feared man laughing like a little boy in the middle of the airport, and that of all things, is what finally broke her. "I have to tell you something," Chantel said, pulling back, wet-faced, gripping his coat with both fists, like the confession might blow her off her feet. "And when I finish, you are allowed to withdraw the hug. There are precedents." "Tell me." "Not here. It requires context, and witnesses being far away." They ended up at a tea shop near the airport, cups untouched, and Chantel put her hands flat on the table like a woman surrendering weapons, took the breath she had been postponing for 11 years, and told him. She started from the beginning. The broken road, the stick she had found behind a fence. It wasn't even a special stick, sir, it was rubbish. And how she had watched the market women do their business, how their trick was always fear first, remedy after. She told him how hungry she had been that day, how the whole prophecy was written by her empty stomach, the air around you, the mountain of money invented on the spot. How she had looked at his frowning face and simply decided right there that the frown would be the problem because she needed a second act and his face was the only material available. How the price she charged him was triple what she had planned to say. The pillow. I don't know why I said the pillow. I was building suspense. And the smile remedy and love conquers everything and never oppress the poor, which she had only added so that if he ever truly became rich, there would be one rich man in the country who was kind to poor people like her. And then how she had taken his money, bought 2 loaves of soft bread with groundnut, and forgotten his face by evening, while he walked away into 11 years of obedience. Then she confessed the second crime. The interview. Have we met before? No, sir, I have one of those faces. How she had lied to him again while begging God to forgive her, with the salary standing beside her as her reason. How she had sat on that sofa while Danby held her hand and told her the whole story of her own crime to her face, promising to break the legs of the prophetess, her legs. How the guilt had eaten her from that day. How the warmth of the last 3 months was her way of saying sorry without saying it. How running away was supposed to make it painless for everybody. So, Chantel finished, staring at her hands. The prophecy that has been running your life since you were 18. The 40 deadline. The smiling, the timer, sir. There is no timer. There was never a timer. There was a hungry girl, and you had the most trustworthy face I had ever scammed. And I am so... She made the mistake of looking up. GTO was staring at her with an expression she had never seen on him. The smile gone, the eyes gone somewhere 11 years long, the whole famous face rearranging itself around the size of it. Every deal, every negotiation, every enemy who had signed everything just to get away from the grinning demon. The accountants, with their health reasons, the highest minimum wage in the industry, the envelopes raining on street vendors, the man he had built, coin by coin, on the word of a barefoot 16-year-old inventing a mountain because she wanted bread with groundnut. He put his hand over his mouth. His shoulders started to shake. And Chairman GTO, the most feared man in the country, put his head back and laughed. Not the short, strange, funny laugh she knew, but something far bigger. A full-body, tear-producing, table-slapping catastrophe of a laugh that bent him sideways in the booth. He tried to speak and failed. He tried again. The pillow, he managed and went under. He came back up, wiping his eyes, gripping the table like a drowning man. Chantel, I bought silk pillows. Silk, imported. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Every year for 11 years I upgraded my pillows. I told myself, if this prophecy takes everything, they will not take me by surprise. I will be ready. He slapped the table and went down again, wheezing. I have a room, Chantel, a whole room. My staff think I love pillows. I do not love pillows. I fear poverty. And he was gone, drowned completely, and the tea shop turned around in alarm, and then, because laughter like that is weather too, started smiling at their own tables without knowing why. And Chantel, sitting across from her life's one great crime as it wept into its sleeve, discovered that up close, at full volume, unarmed, his laugh was the single funniest sound she had ever heard in her life. This feared man, this chairman whose smile made grown men tremble, laughed like a small boy being tickled, loud, ridiculous, completely out of control, and she went down with him. They laughed until it stopped being about the pillow. They laughed the way you laugh when 11 years leave the room. At some point, her hand was in his on the table. Neither of them had records of the transaction, and when he could finally breathe, he wiped his eyes with the heel of his palm, looked at her, really looked, the eyes participating fully, nothing above or beneath the smile because for once the whole face had shown up together. "You know what the funniest part is?" he said, still ragged. "It worked. Every word you invented came true. The mountain, number one. I never oppressed the poor and everything I built stood." He shook his head slowly, wonder and outrage in one expression. "You are the most successful prophet in this country's history, and you made it all up." "I've been saying royalties? Marry me." The words did not enter her head. They stood outside it, knocking. Chantel stared at him. She looked at his mouth as if the problem was there. She looked around the tea shop, at the other tables, at the door, at the window, searching for whoever he was actually talking to, because it could not possibly be her. She had come here to confess. She had prepared herself for shouting, for coldness, for "get out of my sight." Some part of her had even prepared for the version where his men were waiting outside. She had prepared for everything except this. "What?" she finally whispered. "Marry me." "No, I heard you. I mean..." She pressed both hands flat on the table, steadying herself against furniture. "Sir, I just told you that I scammed you. Me. I am the witch. I am the street witch your sister wants to break. You have been living your whole life inside my lie, and I just confessed, and your response is..." Her voice climbed an entire staircase. "Marry me?" The tea shop went silent. "You are supposed to be angry," she said, quieter now, almost pleading like she was correcting his paperwork. "Sir, you are doing this wrong. This is not how this goes. I lied to you, twice, for 11 years. People like me do not get proposed to. People like me get..." "Chantel." "Thrown into the sea, at minimum?" "Chantel." He took her hand across the table, steady as stone, and the panic in her went still. Gto turned her hand over in his, entirely calm, entirely certain, smiling, the small real one, the Danby one, hers now too. "You told me the prophecy scatters if I oppress the poor. 11 years, I never once broke that rule. So no, Chantel, I am not going to punish the woman who wrote it. Now listen to me. I stood in that airport and watched you for 2 hours. 2 hours you stood at that glass fighting yourself, and every minute you did not board, something in my chest kept getting louder. And when you finally turned around, when you picked up that suitcase and turned to come home, I got my answer. Everything I needed to know about you, I learned watching you not leave." He lifted her hand and pressed it flat over his chest. "An 11-year-old lie from you built everything I have. It made me rich. It made me kind. It brought me here, to this table, to you. So imagine what one truth from you will build. Put one truth in here and watch what I do with it." Chantel looked at him for a long time. Her eyes filled, her mouth opened. Every wall she had spent 11 years building, brick by brick, salary by salary, stood there for one final second and then quietly, all at once, fell down. "Yes," she whispered. He blinked. "Yes? Yes." She was crying now and laughing at the same time, wiping her face with the back of her free hand. "Yes, I will marry you, God help me. Yes." And the tea shop, which had been holding its breath since the word marry, erupted. Strangers clapped, somebody whistled. An old woman near the window wiped her eyes with a napkin, and it was only then, in the middle of the applause, with her hand still pressed over his heart, that Chantel sniffed, straightened her spine, and added, "The salary discussion, however, will be separate and itemized." "Hazard fees included," said the chairman. "Then we are engaged." Mr. Beck had to be told first, before anyone. Protocol demanded it, since the chairman's fiancée required a full security file. He stood in the office while the chairman explained. The prophetess, the stick, the interview, the engagement. Mr. Beck's face did not move once because Mr. Beck's face was professionally incapable of moving. But when it was over, he was silent for a long moment and then he said, "Sir, let me confirm my understanding. I personally recommended, vetted, and cleared the woman who invented your entire personality, and my background check did not catch it." "That is correct." "I checked 11 years of records, sir. She was 16, barefoot. There was no paper trail on the stick." "There rarely is, Mr. Beck." Mr. Beck looked at the wall for a moment, the way men look at walls when reconsidering their entire careers. Then he took out his phone, opened Chantel's security file, scrolled to threat assessment, deleted what was written there, and typed, "Maximum, see chairman." The wedding was 8 months later, and it was the event of the decade. Mr. Bayek was the best man. His speech was 4 sentences long and got the second loudest laugh of the night. "I found the chairman a PA. She found him a personality. We are not the same. Thank you." But none of that is the part you want to hear about. The part you want to hear about is G. Danby. Because G. Danby had to be told. There was a family dinner. There was japchae. There was Danby mid-sentence about seating charts when her brother said, "Danby, about the prophetess." And there was the slow, cinematic turn of a little sister's head as 11 years of forensic detail. The road, the stick, the age, the timeline, sister-in-law's suspicious sweating on the sofa that Friday, assembled themselves in her eyes into a single unthinkable conclusion. The scream was heard 2 floors down. Security came running. Security was sent away confused. "You." Danby stood on the sofa, on it, pointing down at Chantel with a serving spoon, while the chairman calmly continued eating. "The juju stick, the pillow, the timer, it was you. I held your hand. I told you the whole story to your face and you said, quote, 'So wicked.'" "In my defense," said Chantel, "you were describing which of my legs you would break first. I panicked." "The leg's offer stands." It did not stand. What stood instead, once Danby had descended from the sofa and stopped hyperventilating and made Chantel reenact the original prophecy twice with a mop standing in for the stick. "Deeper voice. Appa said your voice was deeper. Do the air part. Do the air part." What stood was this. G. Danby became simultaneously the proudest and most insufferable sister-in-law in the country. Insufferable because Chantel was never allowed to forget it. Not once, not ever. Every family gathering. "Careful how you talk to my sister-in-law. She once destroyed a man's face for 11 years with one sentence." Every time Chantel gave any opinion on anything. "Is that a prophecy? Should we write it down? Somebody get the stick." She had a stick now. She had bought a stick, an ornamental one, and it lived in an umbrella stand at the couple's house, and she introduced it to guests as the founder of this family. On Chantel's birthday, she gave her cowrie shells and incense. "Tools of the trade. You were working with nothing. Imagine your range now." And framed above the fireplace, because Danby had commissioned it in secret, hung a painting. A barefoot girl on a broken road, chin lifted, stick planted, facing a frowning boy with heavy shoulders. And pampering, because that was the other half of Danby, the bigger half. She learned how Chantel took her tea in one day, exactly as threatened. She fought bridal shops for her. She held her hand, the same hand she pointed out, the same hand, through every terror of the wedding season. And at the reception, she gave a speech that began as a comedy routine about leg breaking and ended with the entire hall in ruins, Danby included, barely getting out the final line. "My brother smiled for 11 years and none of it was real. Look at his face today. Look at it. Sister-in-law, you are the only prophecy that ever came true." They danced until morning, the chairman, his wife, his sister, and one security man who claimed he did not dance and was photographed doing exactly that. Oh, and the resignation email is still in her drafts. She tried to delete it once, in the early days of the engagement, and Teo stopped her with a hand over the phone. "Leave it," he said. "That email is the only enemy that ever nearly defeated me. I want it where I can see it." So it stays there, unsent, polite, full of gratitude. And once a year, on the anniversary of the airport, he pours 2 glasses, hands her the phone, and makes her read it out loud from beginning to end. She performs it now. She has added a dramatic pause. She does a voice. And every year, at the part where it says, "I will always be grateful for everything you taught me," the most feared man in the country laughs until he has to hold the furniture, because she taught him everything, and the email does not know it. And these days, if you find yourself near a certain compound on a certain street on a Sunday, you might see it for yourself. The most feared man in the country in the garden, being ordered around by his wife and his sister at the same time, and losing gracefully. The famous smile fully retired from professional duty. He frowns freely now in boardrooms, magnificently, and it turns out a real frown closes deals even faster than a fake smile, which he considers her fault too. He laughs that loud, ridiculous laugh in public without shame because his wife has confessed she married him partly for the laugh, and his wife, who still checks every invoice in the house, some religions you keep, has been heard on quiet evenings, telling him a certain story again at his own request, doing the deep voice, doing the air part, while he lies with his head in her lap and his eyes closed, smiling the small real one. She lied to him once, and it built his fortune. She told him the truth once, and it built everything else. And if this story made you laugh, made you feel something, or made you want to go and apologize to somebody you scammed as a teenager, do all three of us a favor. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and drop a comment telling me one lie from your past that you pray never finds your address. Because as Chantel will tell you, some lies come back, and if you are very, very lucky, they come back holding the door open.